Hi guys, Tess here. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy, and all of us at Ride On miss you very, very much, including all of our horses. I'm here with Holly today, and we have a quick lesson for you on something that we all do before and after our lessons. So one thing you've probably been asked to do by your instructor is to clip on your own reins before your lesson. So today we're going to go over where we clip our reins on and why. One of the first things to keep in mind is that we never want our reins to be touching the ground, because you or the horse could step on them or get caught in them, which isn't very safe. So we always want to make sure that our reins are folded and we're holding them in our hands in a way where they're not touching the ground. Once we have our reins ready to go, we're going to clip them to the back of the bit. So I'm going to show you guys why we wouldn't want to clip it up here to the front of the bit. So the bit here, which is made of metal, is actually in Holly's mouth. And so when she feels pressure on the bit in her mouth from your reins, she knows what you're asking her to do. So today I'm going to show you guys what would happen if we clipped our reins to the wrong part of the bit. So here's what the reins would look like if they're clipped on correctly. So they're clipped to this part, which is closest to the bottom of her mouth. And if you pull back on them, as if you're riding her here, then you'll see she feels that pressure. She's even backing up. But the bit pretty much stays where it's supposed to. So now on the contrary, if the reins were clipped to the wrong part of the bit up here in the front, let's see what happens when I pull back. And you can see the bit starts to twist in her mouth. And that is not very comfortable for her. So we always want the reins to be clipped back here, so that Holly is the most comfortable and that the pressure on our bit is the most correct when we're using our reins. So the next thing we're going to go over is how to run up our stirrups. So the way we run up our stirrup is we're going to hold our stirrup iron with one hand, and we're going to hold the stirrup leather with our other hand, and we're going to push the stirrup iron all the way up the back leather till it reaches the very, very top of our saddle. And then we're going to take that excess leather and we're going to put it through the stirrup and pull it through. And then you'll see it stays right in place. So I'll show you guys this a little bit closer since it can be a little bit tricky. Okay, so a little closer now. Again, we're going to hold that stirrup iron and we're going to hold the top piece of leather here. And we're going to slide that stirrup up the back leather against the saddle till it reaches the top. And then we're going to take all that extra leather and put it through the stirrup and pull it through. And then it's going to stay right there where it is. So there are a couple reasons that we always want to run up our stirrups when we're done with our lesson. The first of which is so that when we're leading our horse out of the arena or back to the cross ties or wherever we're going, that the stirrups don't get caught on something, as they could if they're just swinging loosely next to the saddle. The other reason would be so that they're not tapping or hitting our horse's sides, which could be uncomfortable for the horse or even startle them. Thank you guys for joining Holly and I for our virtual lesson today. The next one from me is going to be about horse colors and markings.
Hi, my name is Roxanne and I'm an occupational therapist with Ride On Therapeutic Horsemanship. And I want to begin by just saying I hope everybody is safe and healthy, and just wishing that we get through this quickly. This is a tag-along video to go with what Tess had recorded regarding clipping Holly's reins to the bit and also running up the stirrups. So there's 4 main points therapeutically as an occupational therapist that I found really exciting about that video, because there's so much that can come through an adaptive riding lesson. So just highlighting 4 main points today. The first is the routine. Right off the bat, Tess said that you're going to do these 2 things at the beginning of almost every adaptive riding lesson. What that sparks in me is twofold. First and foremost, every person, almost every single person, feels more comfortable with routine. So whether it's your routine getting up in the morning or something related to an activity, having routine can reduce stress. And this is important for all of us, especially in the times like right now, but also before a lesson, to have that expectation and that consistent routine. Additionally, I want to point out that There's a safety awareness, so the executive function that is being built into the lesson without even trying. Adaptive riding is just doing this in a course of a regular lesson without it necessarily being a goal. So what you're getting out of this is that the safety awareness requires forethought, requires planning. Tess said not to let the reins drag on the ground for safety reasons. I need to be able to think about, oh, I'm dropping my reins on the ground and Holly might step through them and hurt herself or hurt me. Or if I'm dragging the reins on the ground and walking her into the arena or towards the mounting block, I might step through the reins and hurt myself as well. So these scenarios that we think about and following the rules to stay safe help us work on attention, impulsivity control, and just overall executive function and planning to stay safe. And a lot of other activities aren't going to inherently have as much of that as therapeutic riding does or adaptive riding does. Secondly, Tess talked a lot about some spatial concepts. So as an occupational therapist, we're always looking at movement and gross motor function, also fine motor skills with relation to spatial awareness. A lot of times we take this for granted because it seems so obvious, and it's part and parcel of every activity that we do. But when Tess specifically was talking about clipping the reins, she talked about top versus bottom, remembering that I need to clip on bottom of the bit with the reins. And then also with running up the stirrups, they go up the back leather. These seem like very easy spatial concepts, but they are not easy for everyone. And these are things that are really could be an actual goal to work on that spatial piece. Not to mention that we're talking about the front and back of the stirrup leathers. That's a small scale. When I'm on the horse, there's my front body and my back body. There's my front spatial field and my back spatial field. Not to mention the 360, on both sides as well, going all the way around. So that spatial piece is huge. Additionally to that, there's still an important thing to think about in terms of how pulling on the reins, if they're clipped on bottom, is going to affect Holly. And that this is comfortable for her, and it's also sending her an appropriate cue and appropriate information by having it clipped on bottom versus clipped on top. And that again feeds into planning and forethought. When I'm grooming this horse, when I'm tacking up this horse before an adaptive riding lesson, I as the rider, as the client, I'm going to be thinking about what's coming and that I'm setting myself up for success. I'm doing what I need to do, not just to follow the instructions and to do what I'm supposed to do, but because it's going to affect my ability to engage, my performance later. So again, a lot of activities out there for people to engage in, but the therapeutic benefit of that forethought and that planning and that responsibility for my own materials and my own tack and my horse's comfort and safety is really huge in adaptive riding. I want to just also touch on the fourth thing that really stuck out to me when Tess was speaking in her video is the bilateral integration and the bimanual control. So bilateral integration, we can talk about the opposite sides of the body, the diagonal movement patterns, as well as just right and left sides integrating together. Bimanual coordination is just what it sounds like, bi-manual, hands, so two hands working together. So both the tasks that Tess highlighted, which she's showing so that you can have your remote learning at home, and when you go back to your adaptive riding lessons, you're ready to go. But when I'm looking at that as an occupational therapist, I'm also thinking, wow, look how these adaptive riding instructors are facilitating bimanual control. So having controlled, careful movement, which requires graded force through my musculature and my neurology. Also the bimanual coordination of which hand is going to run the stirrup iron up the back and which hand's going to hold the leather in front. Clipping onto the bit. This requires a lot of graded force and control, as well as that bimanual piece. One hand's holding the bit and one hand is clipping. Maybe I need two hands to work that clip. So figuring out what I need to do with both sides of my body to achieve this task. And then again, once you're mounted on your horse and riding in the ring, there's a ton of bilateral integration, opposite sides of the whole body, as well as bimanual integration with the hands that's going on. It could be as simple as steering your reins using two hands together versus a cowboy who's gonna go out with one hand versus the other. But anyway, I just wanted to highlight some beautiful things from Tess's video, and I hope we're all back at the barn soon. Okay, wishing you all well. Please stay healthy, and thank you for listening.